This is Maura Mazurowski with Lawyers Weekly. Today I'm speaking with Marni Byrum, the president of the Virginia State Bar. In addition to leading the VSB, Marni is also an employment lawyer with Prepaid Byrum in Alexandria, Virginia. Marni, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate you taking the time to do this thing. So your predecessor, Leonard Heath, he made lawyer wellness a key part of his agenda during his presidency. What were some major components in your agenda this past year?
My main focus was to bring more people into being involved with the state bar. My theme was inclusion, diversity, and engagement, and I spoke about that everywhere I went around the state. Um, Little did I know how important it would become, but it was important to me to get the message across that we all have to belong to the bar, but we don't all have to be engaged with it. But we all need to have a voice. And there are so many ways that you can participate and be part of the important missions of the state bar. And so as I traveled around the state and around the country, those were the things that I talked about. And that brought under the umbrella all of these other projects that people had worked on as an opportunity for people to continue to be involved with the state bar.
So what were some of those ways that you would try to encourage people to be involved if they weren't necessarily part of the bar?
Well, each month I tried in my column, I tried to highlight those volunteer efforts that were being done around the state, whether it be by one of our conferences or sections or by individual bar associations. There are remarkable programs that are being held both to help the public and protect the public. And I went, for instance, to the Allegheny and Bath County Bar Association does a program, a senior law day. They had over 300 people from all across the western part of the state come together for this informational session. And these were members of the public, and they had brought together a broad brush of individuals who could provide information, all under the umbrella of a bar association, a state bar program. And then we have the diversity conference that's working on issues of inclusion and engagement, and issues of implicit bias, and how that manifests itself not only in our society but within our profession. We have the solo and small firm forums, again, where we're going into the community to try to help those local and small firm practitioners. And so I was trying to encourage members throughout the Bar Association not only to become aware of these things, but also to find how they could participate in it.
That's great. So as an employment lawyer, you are known for representing both the employees and the employers. So given that you see both sides of the coin in that scenario, how do you think your practice has shaped your overall view of state bar work and lawyer regulation?
I think my practice tends to show me what a difference an individual can make.
What a difference an individual can make?
Can make, yes. And I think that follows through to bar work. I think a lot of people believe that it's a large organization and I don't really have a role. I don't have a place that I can participate and make a difference. And I think that's absolutely not the case. I found from the very beginning, and of course I've always, you and I've had this conversation before, I'm very much a bar junkie kind of person, so I've been involved in these activities for as long as I've been an attorney. And so for me, it was a natural progression to work my way through various committees, to look for ways that I could be involved, look for issues that were of interest to me, and engage in those kinds of committees. Beginning with something as simple as prepaid legal services, which actually doesn't even exist anymore as a committee. But when I first got active in the state bar, that was a big issue. And that fit very nicely into my area of practice, looking for people who were underserved, people who were unemployed, people who had been had job issues that needed some assistance. And so it seemed like a natural fit for it. And then with respect to lawyer regulation, that is an issue that's near and dear to my heart. Legal ethics has been what I call my home in the bar. I've been on that committee several times, been privileged to chair it a couple of times, and it is the committee that makes the rules, which are then enforced. And so I think it's a very important place to be involved in the bar. And I have, throughout my term, encouraged people to get involved in the disciplinary system,
Mm.
be it on the end where you're making the rules or the end where you're enforcing the rules. And that is a simple way you can get involved in your local jurisdiction. And I think that, again, the nature of my practice of working with individuals and individual rights gives me an appreciation for the importance of how those rules are enforced and
Yeah,
what the actual practical impact is of the rules of professional responsibility.
definitely. That makes sense. So I'm sure when you were sworn in as president last June, you probably didn't anticipate a worldwide pandemic to hit during your term.
That's
So
true.
how has COVID-19 affected your plans for leadership? Did it impact your presidential agenda in any way?
It did not impact my agenda. It
Hmm.
impacted the way in which I was able to interact with the membership. Um, the calendar of the bar president, as you might imagine, is full every week. On March 12th, that was my last public engagement, and after that, my calendar went blank because everything got canceled. So the hard part then becomes how do you continue to communicate with the membership? How do you continue to engage people in the activities of the state bar? And so we pivot to more of a virtual or webcast, what have you. Now, you've noticed if you go on the State Bar website month by month, we are tracking the events that are supposed to be occurring and making those decisions on a moment by moment, if you will, um, process of what to cancel, what to continue, what we can actually do. Because we are an arm of the Virginia Supreme Court, and a state agency, if you will. We are governed by FOIA regulations. So there are certain things that cannot be done except face to face. With the governor's emergency order, we were able to shift on some of those and hold some meetings by conference call.
Hmm.
But in the general course, the business of the state bar must be done in a public forum because we're a public agency. So that has been a challenge. And as the governor's orders evolve, then we will evolve with that as to what we can do and how we do it. Personally, with respect to my agenda of inclusion, diversity, and engagement, I have continued to try to reach out to local bar associations. I have been involved in virtual meetings, attending conferences that way, trying to speak with groups. But that really is the thing that I've missed the most because I am very much a people person, and so not being able to go to these places, I was very much looking forward to going to the Eastern Shore for the Solo and Small Firm Forum, going to Southwest Virginia for other bar events, the southern part of the state, and getting out and really engaging with the bar, the members of the bar. So that has impacted me.
Yeah.
But in terms of my overall agenda and mission, it really has not impacted it. In terms of the um, getting people active, I think the local bar associations is always the first place where most people begin. And I think they've been impacted just as everyone else has. The local bar associations are not holding face-to-face events. The major benefit to a lot of lawyers on a local level to being active in a state bar or a local bar is networking and face-to-face engagement. And so when you remove that from the equation, it becomes a challenge. I have not, I'm involved in several local bar associations in Northern Virginia. I have not seen advertisements for any events. It's just the calendar's blank. They are trying to hold webinars, CLEs, things like that, just to maintain contact with their members. But in terms of face-to-face contact, that's become non-existent at the moment.
Yeah, and that makes sense. So as president, what has your response been to the recent nationwide protests that began in the aftermath of George Floyd's death?
Well, that's been a challenge for me, and you and I have talked about that before. The Virginia State Bar is an arm of the Supreme Court, and so we are limited in what we can do and how we can do it. I did issue a letter to the membership about a week ago, and 2 weeks ago, I guess, and basically saying that we can't take a position politically, but be mindful of the oath that we took with respect to the Constitution and what that means for equal justice and how we should be involved in what's going on. Subsequent to that, as you probably saw, the Supreme Court also issued a statement. And I think that the bar and the court said as much as they were able to say under the circumstances. Most of the mandatory bars around the country have issued some type of statement. All of them are relatively similar in trying to walk the same fine line that that we needed to. In fact, the only bar that I'm aware of that has not, that chose not to say anything was the DC bar. And they issued a statement specifically saying that unless their membership voted for them to do so, they were not able to take a position.
Interesting. Interesting. So what duties, if any, do you think a lawyer has right now to respond to the protests and calls for racial justice?
Well, I think they, as lawyers, we are not only held to a standard of complying with and enforcing the Constitution, but we also are looked to for the logical thought processes and analytical skills that we have, that we've been trained to have, to look at these issues. And I think now more than ever, it's important for us to be part of this dialogue, to make sure that the dialogue is addressing the underlying premises of the Constitution and equal justice and what that means in whatever form it may take. And for us to be silent would be a mistake.
Absolutely. What do you think, especially after, what a year 2020 has been, what do you think the State Bar will look like in 10 years from now?
That's really hard to say. As an entity, I don't really see it changing. I mean, the operations of the State Bar, and we have a phenomenal executive director who has an innate ability to zero in on the mission of the bar and service to our members and exactly what it is that we are here to do. And she has managed to maintain the operations of the State Bar, even though people are working remotely. They have a skeletal crew that rotates in and out of the bar office itself, to make sure that we are meeting all of our obligations with respect to lawyer regulation and discipline, with respect to membership benefits, with respect to membership dues and renewal, with respect to any other issues that need to be addressed, so that the staff is always available and accessible, just not necessarily face to face. So with that in mind, I don't see that this changes what the State Bar looks like. I think we will become more of or begin to utilize more virtual tools. But as I mentioned a few minutes ago, that's a challenge with respect to some of the things the State Bar has to do from a regulatory standpoint or from a operational standpoint as an agency of the state. So we're taking it a day at a time. We're looking at each thing as it comes up to determine, is this something we can do? And of course, we're all hopeful that there will be a vaccine and life will evolve back to the way it has been in the past. So it's hard to know until we see what the landscape looks like in 6 to 12 months to know whether the changes that we're seeing now are permanent or
Mm.
whether those changes are just part of this evolution and that ultimately we will be able to go back to more large face-to-face encounters.
Yeah. I think taking it day by day is the best most of us can do right now. Absolutely. So, what's next for you?
Well, when my term ends, I still have some bar commitments. Obviously, I'm
Mhm.
past president. I will continue to serve on committees and be active. I don't see me ever not being active in the state bar, and so I rotate back into my practice, and we'll see.
Well, thank you again so much for speaking with me today. It's always a pleasure talking with you. And
Thank you so much.
absolutely, and good luck with the rest of your presidency.
Okay, thank you. Take care, Mark.
Bye.